5 nights after my highway accident, I lay in my hospital bed when the door opened at 11:47 p.m. A police officer stepped in, locked it behind him, and put his hand over my mouth. I stared into his eyes until he whispered something that told me my own daughter had put me here. Before I tell you what happened next, if this hits you already, hit like and tell me where you're watching from. This is Revenge Dad. Some elements here are fictional, built for storytelling, but what Walter learned, you can carry with you. The box wasn't heavy. 35 years of work and the proof that would end everything fit inside a cardboard box I could carry with one hand. I walked it into Hayes Freight Solutions, the company I'd built from a single truck in 1987 with $400 and a wife, Margaret, who believed in me more than I believed in myself. She didn't live to see it grow to 230 trucks. Ovarian cancer took her in 2003, when our daughter Audrey was 11. I promised her that morning we'd be okay. I kept that promise for 22 years. The accident happened on a Friday in September. A truck slammed into me on the 10 freeway and vanished before help arrived. 3 cracked ribs, a head injury, 3 months at Cedars-Sinai. The first person at my bedside wasn't Audrey. It was Victor Langford, silver hair, tailored jacket, a smile I remembered from 6 years earlier, when he'd tried to buy my company for 40% under value, and I'd told him no. Now here he was, calling me Walter, telling me the offer still stood, his eyes sweeping my hospital room like he was searching for something. Audrey arrived that afternoon, red-eyed, terrified, holding my hand so hard it shook. She insisted on taking over the company while I healed. I let her. What I didn't notice was that she never asked what I needed. She told me what she was going to do. 5 nights in, the officer came. He called himself Daniel Cross, said he was Lapped Commercial Transport, and told me Audrey wasn't running my company. She was dismantling it, redirecting contracts to outside operators. Then his eyes went straight to my nightstand, my closet, my jacket pockets. He wasn't warning me, he was searching me. He found nothing, because 3 days before the crash, I'd noticed something wrong in our freight data and quietly handed a copied drive to Marcus Reed, my accountant of 22 years, with instructions to tell no one. The next morning, Audrey brought my coffee exactly the way I liked it and mentioned, almost casually, that she was streamlining a few secondary lanes. I knew our routes better than anyone alive. Those weren't secondary. Those were the arteries of the company. I smiled and let her think I hadn't noticed. That night Marcus called, voice tight. 14 routing changes in 10 days, all carrying Audrey's authorization codes, but altered after the fact. I called an old friend, Ethan Cole, retired federal transport inspector, and asked him to trace it. "Give me 48 hours, he said. 2 days later, Ethan called with the name behind the truck that hit me, Sierra Pacific Transport, a Nevada shell company. Beneficial owner, traced through nominee directors and a Delaware holding company, a trust administered for Audrey Christine Hayes. The room didn't spin, it just went very still. My daughter had built the wall around the truck that broke my ribs. Ethan kept digging. Victor Langford had spent 11 years inside California's Transportation Oversight Office before going private. He knew exactly where the blind spots were, and he'd targeted Audrey deliberately, meeting her at an industry dinner, spending 6 months building trust before he ever mentioned my company's name. By the time she understood what he wanted, she was already in too deep to walk away clean. Then Marcus called about a young coordinator named Sophie Mercer, who'd been quietly falsifying nothing she'd been ordered to. Audrey had her rewriting manifests, turning hazardous chemical shipments into general freight. Sophie had spent 6 weeks secretly filming every altered document in a storage room with no cameras, terrified no one would believe her over Audrey Hayes. I told Marcus, "Tell her she's not alone. Tell her to keep recording." Audrey, learning nothing was suspected, forced Sophie to present the new manifest process to the whole logistics team, trying to make her complicit in public. I told Sophie to go through with it and keep recording. That same week, a legal notice hit my hospital portal, a conservatorship petition, filed by Audrey Christine Hayes, backed by a medical report from my own doctor, claiming my judgment had been compromised by the head injury. Dr. Harmon, careful, thorough Dr. Harmon, had apparently decided I could no longer be trusted to run my own life. I called an elder law attorney, Helen Vance, who moved within the hour to block the emergency motion and demand an independent medical exam. Ethan traced the money, $80,000, paid to Dr. Harmon in 2 installments, the first 3 weeks before my accident. They hadn't reacted to the crash. They'd planned it, then built the paperwork to control what came after. Cross, too, had a price, $62,000 over 18 months, funneled through a charitable fund, whose listed director was a deputy chief of the Lapdid. Victor hadn't just bought a doctor, he'd bought rank. Then Audrey filed notice for an emergency shareholder meeting, trying to lock in the conservatorship before Helen's independent exam could stop her. Victor would be there too, in person, to complete the transfer. Special Agent Rebecca Okafor, now running the federal case, decided that meeting would be where the arrests happened. But first, Victor made a mistake. Sensing the walls closing, he called Cross and said 4 words, "Clean it up." Cross understood exactly what those words meant for a man who knew too much. He sat in a parking garage for 22 minutes, then drove straight to the FBI and told them everything. The payments, the deleted camera footage from the morning of my crash, the night he walked into my hospital room to search it. 2 hours later, Sophie Mercer walked into the same building with 3 months of video evidence on her phone. She was terrified. She went anyway. 8 days later, I was discharged. Ethan drove me straight to the yard. I put on the same Navy suit I'd worn signing our first carrier contract in 1991. Looser now, but it still knew how to carry itself. I picked up the box. The conference room door was closed. Through the glass, I could see Audrey at the head of the table, presenting a new management structure to the board like it was already hers. I pushed the door open. "Dad, you should be resting." "I've been resting long enough." I laid the evidence out piece by piece, without rushing. The ELD data showing 23 unauthorized stops. The shell company that owned the truck that hit me. The emails between Audrey and Langford's people. The $80,000 payoff to Dr. Harmon, made before I was ever hurt. The $62,000 paid to Officer Cross, now cooperating with federal investigators. I told them Deputy Chief Everett Shaw had been taken into custody that morning. The room didn't breathe. Audrey wasn't looking at the papers. She was looking at me, one silent tear sliding down, and she didn't wipe it away. "You didn't build this company," I told her. "You only used it." The door opened. Agent Okafor walked in with 2 federal agents. "Ms. Hayes, I have a federal warrant for your arrest." Audrey didn't run. She just let go of the chair and stood there, smaller than I'd ever seen her. At LAX that same morning, Victor Langford was 2 steps from boarding a flight to Zurich when federal agents closed in from both sides. 6 years he'd waited for his moment. He'd simply waited 1 day too long. Later, Agent Okafor told me what Audrey had said before her lawyer arrived, that Victor had spent a year building trust with her before he ever asked for anything, that when she tried to pull away, twice, he threatened to point investigators at me first. She believed him. She was exhausted, isolated, and afraid, and none of that excused what she'd done, but it was the truth underneath it. She'd asked, before they let her out, whether I was okay. "I told her you were standing up," Rebecca said. "That seemed like the most accurate thing I could say." 6 months later, Hayes Freight was still standing. Marcus stayed on and helped build an independent audit committee before I could even suggest it. Sophie became our director of compliance and framed the falsified manifest on her office wall, not as a trophy, but a reminder. Ethan joined our advisory board and still drives down every first Tuesday for coffee in the same comfortable silence we've shared for 30 years. We opened a small foundation to help other family businesses recognize exactly what had almost been done to mine. In June, a letter arrived from a law office I didn't recognize. Inside, in Audrey's handwriting. "I'm sorry." I opened my desk drawer where I'd kept a photo for 39 years. Audrey at 8, grinning behind the wheel of my first truck, feet nowhere near the pedals. I laid the letter beside it and closed the drawer. Outside my window, 230 trucks were starting their engines for the morning run. Honest work, honest roots. I built it once. I'd kept it. That was enough. I've driven a lot of roads in 67 years, but none broke me like this one. Love without awareness is just vulnerability waiting to be used. I gave my daughter my trust, my company, my silence, and nearly lost all three. Don't assume that because someone carries your blood, they carry your values. Betrayal rarely announces itself. It arrives in signed documents and reasonable explanations, in the voice of someone you'd never think to question. I believe the right people were placed around me at exactly the right moment. Marcus with his patience, Sophie with her courage, Ethan with his loyalty. None of them had to do what they did, they chose to. That's not luck, that's grace. If something here stayed with you, tell me in the comments what it was. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe. The next story is already waiting.